Hello and welcome to the Radio Games Club. We're talking about Hi-Fi Rush. We've been meaning to talk about Hi-Fi Rush for a while. We're finally going to do it.
Finally.
Bet you didn't expect that at this day and age at this time.
A discussion of Hi-Fi Rush a month late from what we originally planned? Yeah. Never. How would that ever happen? Right. So let's jump into this. We're going to do the show format the same way we did it last time, which was a while back. We haven't done one of these directly for a while. We've been doing Game Pass Games Clubs, but the gist is the first opening part of the show is going to be spoiler-free. It's going to be a spoiler-free discussion, and then we're going to get into spoilers. I'll give a clear warning when we're going to do that, so if you haven't played the game and what we say in the first bit convinces you, hop off then. Go play the game and then come back, Then you can hear the rest of the deep discussion about what we really liked. Broad strokes.
And then agree with us in the comments.
Or disagree. That also helps the metrics. It really doesn't matter what you do as long as you do something.
Interaction. Your favorite letter in the comments below.
Post your favorite band member of Nine Inch Nails. How about that?
Yeah.
See if that happens. All right. Let's start talking about Hi-Fi Rush. So I want to get in with some context first, because I think this is one of those games where the scenario surrounding the release of it is one of the things that made it really special.
Which is that
you either had to be there or just, you could still get this experience now if you haven't seen any other things about it. So the big hubbub about this game is that we didn't know anything about it. Tango Gameworks had not announced this. Bethesda had not announced this. No trailers had been shown. This didn't leak, surprisingly. There was no leak that I am aware of for this game, at least not one widespread. So when Xbox and Bethesda do their little developer showcase and showcase, I think it was 6 games total, and there was a little Tango Gameworks slot, everyone was like, hey, what's that doing there? And then it dropped, and Hi-Fi Rush showed on the screen, and everyone was like, this looks like really complete. And then they were like, hey, you can play it today. And everyone went woo and clapped.
Yeah.
I think that's an accurate reproduction.
Yeah. Which is a little too rare this day and age to have a complete game.
I also think the reason I feel like this worked super well in the benefit of Hi-Fi Rush specifically is because this is not a game concept that I think most people would find themselves interested in otherwise.
Yeah, no.
Like a rhythm and character action game, both of those genres are already niche. So you're working on a back foot there already for marketing. The marketing trailer that we got was snarky and had a record scratch in it.
It was pretty bad.
But you're wondering how I got here.
Yeah.
Which fits the tone of the game, but I think for a lot of people is a pretty big turnoff.
Yeah.
And so that was probably not super convincing, but then they threw the little carrot of like, hey, it's on Game Pass and it's dropping later today. So I think that leads to people who are maybe a little bit curious because it looked really solid when they were showing it. But I think the fact that so few people have played a game like this, nobody was really sold on it immediately. It took people playing it to get sold. And then word of mouth spread like wildfire. Hi-Fi Rush sold a lot of copies and did very well, both on Steam and on Game Pass. So I think this was definitely a success for Tango in the end. Sure. And I think spoilers for what we're going to say, not for story or anything, we really like this game.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think this probably goes for all of us. Even if maybe in the moment we sound like it's a big negative, if we ever bring up a negative, it's probably just a nitpick in the grand scheme of things.
I was struggling to try to find something actually bad about
Yeah.
the game.
Yeah. I think it's the mark of quality here is really astounding, considering this can't have had a ton of QA for it to be so tight-lipped and everything, and had no one know about this. And I imagine Tango doesn't have as big of a QA department as larger studios do, so I'm impressed. Let's get into what Hi-Fi Rush is.
Shows how impressive the tuning is for a supposedly little QA team.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, great job all around on that. So Hi-Fi Rush, for those who haven't heard of this, is a character action rhythm game. It sits squarely in the middle of those two genres. Everything's on the beat. So enemies attack on the beat, you act on the beat. Even if you mistime a thing, you're still going to act on the beat, which helps get people who maybe aren't great at rhythm games still to kind of play in the rhythm game framework. Super cool. Always means you're matching the music. Great soundtrack, by the way. Fantastic soundtrack.
Fantastic.
Both the licensed music and the streamer-friendly music, which is in-house made, to my understanding, is very good. So we're going to talk more about that as we go through boss fights and whatnot.
Overflowing
character
with
action
passion.
game, Devil May Cry style. You have level up, or not level ups, but you have abilities that you buy, very similar to Devil May Cry, which I think was another thing that surprised people because they didn't really go over that in the trailers that popped up that day. So it kind of seemed like this was going to be a little like 4-6 hour game. This is like a beefy game.
It's just because there is there's post game content. You could probably get a solid, like, just with the score chasing and everything, you could probably get a solid, like, 30 hours out of it if you wanted to get everything. Because they make it fun to get everything, which is pretty rare to see nowadays. That phrase is probably going to be coming up a lot with this game, rare to see nowadays.
Yeah.
It's also
but,
impressive because this is not a full price release, even if you don't have
No,
Game Pass.
yeah.
It's a $30 game. And I
Which
feel like
I think it's
after
worth
playing
60.
this, all of us would probably have been willing to pay 60 for this had we not
Definitely.
had Game Pass. Which is astounding. Like the mark of quality here is crazy.
Mhm.
All right. So before we get into specifics, let's talk about the opening section, which is you find out, of course, that you have magical robot music powers.
Yes,
Woohoo!
because you're a defect
You've got a music player in your heartbeat thing.
in your bosom.
in that very, would you call that tone a snarky cutaway bit with the where
I'd say snarky cutaway fits.
Because we've talked about this, I think, in passing, where we've compared it to Forspoken because of their similar release window and how they have
the writing
the
of
same
the character in the trailer appears similar.
Yeah.
But it proves that, like, for a while, things like the Avengers movies were, like, actually funny and silly because you can do that kind of writing good when you have actual passion and people that know how to write funny things behind it. And then, you can also do it really bad, like in Forspoken, where the characters are just talking and they want to turn the game off and you want to turn the game off also, because if they're talking about how annoying the game is all the time in the game, it kind of makes the player feel like that too. But Hi-Fi Rush is not like that. Because I don't know. I think in terms of like the wacky inspirations, I think they definitely are worn on the sleeve. Like it just feels like somebody really, really liked Scott Pilgrim and Fooly Cooley and just kind of like mushed them together into their own kind of thing. Because like that just level of like it has like the dumb snarky like one-liners every 5 seconds. But even if you don't like that, there's like a really like over the top physical gag that's going on, or like just like an entire scene will come to a stop to just have something that, like, if you know what it is, it's a reference to something, but if you don't know what it is, it's still funny because it's just absurd. Like that one time, which this happens right after the first level, so I don't think it falls into spoiler territory, but like they only do it once in the whole game, but you come back to the home base for your little squad, and and what's it? Cinnamon? No, Cinnamon's the robot.
Peppermint?
Oh my
Cinnamon?
god, Peppermint. There we
Pepper.
go. They're all food names, so I'm getting it mixed up. in my head.
Peppermint chai cinnamon
Yeah.
808.
Peppermint, like Chai says something stupid, and Peppermint turns to the camera, and just all the lighting goes black. It's just like underlit to the face to make her look terrifying, and there's like a snap zoom and everything. They never do that for the rest of the game. All of that was made just for that one gag, and it's really funny.
I'll say
It's so good.
I think that's a huge part of the difference between Forspoken and this. And we have talked about Forspoken on the show and how Brett and I like sat there and played it for a while and legitimately began to lose our minds over the course
It was
of
really
the
funny.
demo. Incredibly funny. I wish we had recorded it.
Yeah,
It was insane.
seriously.
The amount of times the tutorial popped up for something, what was it, 5 or 10 minutes after?
Horrific.
After you
Horrific.
asked about it.
But I want to
yeah.
get to the point there, which is with Forspoken, we were already hearing repeats of the same lines a lot in that demo. And I think here because these jokes are almost entirely one-offs, they land so much better. Because you're not getting them hammered into your skull, or if you are getting them repeated, it's a 3-beat, so it's going to have like a different twist on the final one.
I think there was one of the expressions we used was the shotgun approach for like throwing jokes at the wall.
Yeah,
but the thing is,
so many things at once.
It's a slug shotgun, and it keeps hitting.
Yeah.
They're wildly accurate. They really got that spread pattern narrowed on the jokes here. Yeah, so I think generally the writing in comedy lands really well. The gameplay is super solid. I think this is a very good example of a rhythm action game, or even just a character action game taking the rhythm out of it entirely.
Yeah.
I would say this is up there with the likes of Bayonetta and Devil May Cry. It is a contender for that title of like a great rhythm action game. I would say this game's better than Bayonetta 3, and I don't think a lot of people would disagree.
I think in another episode we did say that this game just feels like, in the wake of Platinum's very strange incapability of making a non-Bayonetta product that is actually good. This feels like an old Platinum game. Like if you
this feels like a Clover GameWorks
Clover
game.
would make. Yeah, like Clover on the PS2 would make something like this. Is what it feels like. It's great.
Which is great because a lot of the developers on this game were Clover devs.
Exactly. They still got it.
Because Clover used to make the Beautiful Joe games. They've made a number of action games that Okami and a few other things that have been very well received. They then split off into Platinum and into some other studios. Some of them went to form Tango off of Platinum eventually. So there are some real vets here of very high quality directors of action games.
With Beautiful Joe and Okami, also the art style for this game, incredibly cartoony and fun and just
heavily stylized. I would also say this is going to age great. Like I don't think this game is going to look bad ever. They really landed. I think this to me feels a lot like when Guilty Gear Strive first and Xrd first started getting shown, and people were like, "This art style is great. Why isn't this in more games?" This feels like the first game that's not in those genres, and maybe Genshin
actually used it.
Could fit in.
Yeah.
That has used that style, and it works really well. So I hope we see this style again from Tango. I would love to see either a sequel to this or something else, but it looks great in motion. I'm sure it took a lot of effort because you can tell they hand animated so many things here for this to work right and tuned things perfectly. They play with like smear frames, but in 3D.
The animations being on beat always.
Yes.
For everything. For like just like traffic cones in the background and like panels
lines
on the
of
wall.
paint on the walls and like vent fans and.
Also, did you guys notice that? Like one of the things that I really enjoy, like one of the little tiny love touches that I like in video games is when the sounds of your foot falling on the ground make different things, like whether it's splashing in a puddle on dirt, on a metal grate, things like that. There's little visible onomatopoeia impact lines that change depending on what surface Chai's foot is landing on.
It's wonderful.
Along
and the sound
with
is
sound
different
for that too.
Yeah, it's absolutely phenomenal. What was that, Brett?
Oh, I said it's all on beat. To reiterate what we said, it's all those things, the sound, the little visuals, and everything. It all goes with the song that's playing in the babackground.
Yep,
so
which is
very
just
satisfying.
It's the level of commitment here is, I think, what makes a difference. Of when I think there have been attempts at this type of game before. No Straight Roads came out. There's been, I think, maybe the closest thing in quality level to this is Sayonara Wild Hearts, bizarrely, which is not really a super close comparison, but it's the only type of rhythm game that is not a pure rhythm game that I think has gotten close to this in quality. No Straight Roads has the problem of just it's not got the polish behind it. It's a great concept. Some of the boss fights are really fun, but it just doesn't stick the landing. And Hi-Fi Rush, everything sticks the landing of like it continues to be impressive, and it continues to introduce new things as the game goes on that continue to just make it a better full product, which I think is just really exciting to see a game treated this way. All right, let's talk about the first 2 levels while we're going through the spoiler free, and then we'll jump into spoilers. So our first level is Chai learning his abilities, finding 808. You learn the basics of combat through, I would say, some quite fun tutorials. They're not, they don't make you wait around.
Ones
and they
that when you're
contextualize
replaying,
them.
you can skip. Yeah.
Yep. They contextualize them
And-
too as like Chai in his head going through being on a stage and like equating the world to his stage. So it's got some great internal logic.
If you skip the tutorials enough, a refrigerator will get angry at you.
It will, and you'll feel very bad. And then it will refuse to give you the tutorial if you skip too many of them, which is very funny. So great tutorial at the start. It introduces you very quickly to the basic enemies, which are just like standard hit you with a stick guys. There's some that shoot you with a blaster. That's pretty much most of the enemies in the game, to be honest.
Pretty much. They varied up enough.
They varied up enough. That's the same for most action games.
Bigger.
But you get to see your basic too. You go through, and we eventually fight our first boss fight, which I think this, for me, is the moment where the game clicked. Of like, I see what's happening when you fight QA 1 million, which is this gigantic robot, classic 2 arms that you got to beat up, pounding the stage, so you need to jump to dodge attacks.
That was a very fun big boss to fight with dodging it, because dodging, I think, for the only, I think, nitpicker problem that I had with the game was in-air movement being sort of like that, just completely halts your momentum in parts.
I think that's the best way to put that. There is like this weird thing with the jump where the jump will not really carry your momentum forwards and sort of has its own framing, which I think is probably to guarantee that your double jump is always on time. I have a feeling that's why that's the way it is, but it does feel awkward of like, when you do like a dash jump, it feels like you should be shot further or something, but you're really not. You're just kind of getting more upward momentum than you are horizontal momentum, which in practice it starts to feel fine after a while, but it does feel really awkward at first.
Good for those air combos.
Yeah. But yeah, this first boss fight I think was great. It's a great introduction to the types of mechanics you're going to see, which is actually there are unique mechanics for every boss. This QA 1 million's big gimmick is that you're having to like punch in the arms so that you can reveal a weakness at the center and do some like crazy damage. Every boss is their own thing. They don't tend to repeat, which is great. The song here is what's the number? It's a 9 Inch Nails song. 1 million?
Or
it's 10.
It's
like the 999,000.
It might be 999,999, but that also is another 9 Inch Nails song, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
It's
1 million being the sequel to it.
Because playing this game for the first time was the first time that I had heard this song before.
Yeah, that's 1 million.
Because it's just not on like a very well known 9 Inch Nails like album. It's one of the newer ones that just kind of went under the radar. Because admittedly, it is a very, very simple song, which is, not really the best for a 9 Inch Nails album, but it's really good for this game to have as a first boss fight song. Just have something be like perfect 4/4 time with just an interesting riff that repeats a lot. To really just like, okay, this is as simple as we could possibly make it. And we have a big name on it. Worth saying also that like the first song here in the game is Lonely Boy by the Black Keys.
Yeah.
So already you have the big name star power on it. That is an awesome song by a kick-ass band. And then
for sure
following it up with this, I mean, like the fight is pretty simple, but then you have like the and he moves with every single like eighth note to do a different like arm movement or something, and like that is like the moment when you're dodging all those in quick succession where it's like, okay, now we all right, it's all come
the
full
matrix
circle.
has formed inside of you and you understand the music. And that's like the real superpower of this game, is because it's so consistent with having everything be on beat. It just is so smooth to play the whole time, which is phenomenal. I think that's a very impressive thing that the game is doing, of just making you feel like you're doing well even if you aren't necessarily on beat. It's also got great assists of, if you're not a rhythm inclined player, you have a lot of things you can enable, and it was just a patch that came out that I think fixed why it was going to be on this, but computer problems can't be. So why it's like only major issue with the rhythm stuff is that there are certain like rhythm parry things that you get later in the game that are much harder to pull off. And those are legitimately like if you can't pull it off, you can't finish the game. In the old version, now there is you have to do them. Now there is an easy mode for those where you only need to hit most of the notes, and so it's not as punishing and as hard.
Nice.
That you can enable in the lower difficulties, which is super great.
Those special locks. I thought you were talking about the laser enemy later on.
Yeah, well, they do the same thing. Both of them have that now. So there's a number of things that have that. But yeah, it's great. It's super accessible now. I think even if you're not into rhythm games, you can get into this. The music is great throughout. We were all nervous when the licensed music started in the trailer. I think everyone had a reaction of like, huh, what's going on? Especially because this is like a super anime aesthetic game that suddenly is playing Nine Inch Nails, and there's a little bit of dissonance there of like, I don't quite match this.
When you're just watching it, you have a similar reaction to what one might feel when you're watching the announcement trailer for a game like Crime Boss Rock-A City, where you just see a game with an art style and just star power in it, and you just go, okay, this is very strange. I couldn't, I don't think these devs went up to Trent Reznor and were like, please, Trent, you would love this game. Our very brightly colored game would fit super well with all of your album covers that look like torn apart flesh and rust. This would be perfect. Please let us use your music for this game. I don't think they did that. I think they were just like, okay, we like this song and this song and this song, which is a dangerous thing, but it worked really well for this because they all picked good music.
Which is also wild, Brett, because that is what they did for specifically the 1 Million song of when they prototyped this fight. Yeah, so Min-Max did a great review with John, the like director of this game, where he talks about like what the initial concepting of this was like, and they prototyped the 1 Million fight to 1 Million before they had the license. So they didn't know they were going to get it, and they were like, okay, we're going to prototype it to this song, and then we're going to try and get the license, and they did, and so they didn't have to like scrap anything. But that's
nice.
What happened is they actually like prototype things to the music they wanted. And I think in most cases got it, which is bizarre. Awesome. That shouldn't have worked.
You can tell, honestly, because
with
like
this game, it deserved to work.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it deserved to work. But like you can like, I don't know. I can't imagine any of these fights with a different song. They're all tailor made. Even the ones that are like made in house, they're tailor made for that like in house made track. That's probably what they had to get.
If you turn on streamer mode, you're playing with different music, but the different music is all very good. It's in house made, and it's meant to sound like the songs that are being taken out, so that you're not getting copyright struck. It's still great. Like, all the music is very good. Yeah, I think super phenomenal first part of this game. Great introduction. It just gets stronger, and this is, I think, where the game like really reveals its scale. Of Brett, I don't think 30 hours is enough to fully complete this game, because I'm checking my own time here. I only played probably an additional hour and a half after I beat the game, and I'm at 20 hours.
Oh,
so if I recall, the main campaign's like 16 hours minimum.
Yeah, something like that.
It's long. It's lengthy. Beefy campaign.
Hi-Fi Rush. Yeah, where? Okay, let's see. Where do we see?
Where are you sitting,
hours
Alex?
Done. Where's the?
It's the achievements page.
Achievements page. Oh, this might.
Yeah, if you scroll down, there'll be like achievements in your Game Pass bit. You click on the big like.
Oh, I thought it took longer for this. 17 hours and 2 minutes on my end, and I've just started the post game.
Yeah, so that seems like about the par. So beefy offering here.
It felt a lot longer in a very good way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in a great way. Especially because I think one other thing that we should mention before we get into spoilers is how non-repetitive the levels are. Like, this is something that really surprised me. It does not feel like you're ever playing the same like level environment again, outside of like some similarities, like this, because you're in one location, so obviously there's similarities, but every level has like its own environment that stands out super well. There's all sorts of cool environments. The trailer showed off like there's an underground lava area, there's an area that is like the museum you're going through, there's the main area that you're walking through, which is just like the streets of the city. There's all sorts of cool stuff, so tons of fun things to look forward to with the level design here.
Yeah, That is another thing that makes it feel like a thing plucked out of game design from another age, because you just don't see that anymore. I feel
It
like a
feels like
lot of
Ratchet and
games.
Clank. Like it feels like a Jack and
It
Daxter or
does
Ratchet and
genuinely,
Clank.
yeah. And it's not necessarily like some games, like depending on how they're made, like just saying that something is repetitive isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like some games are built around having a really good grind, like things like Vampire Survivors, like that is built around doing the same thing over and over. And that game is great for it. But like I feel like a lot of things, especially in like the open world direction everything's going, you really can't have the okay, and then something new happens, and then something else new happens, and something else new happens, because what happens if you accidentally go to the last thing first? You missed all the new things before that because it's open. But because the game is linear, it's like every single level, like okay, yeah, you have like you can jump around and you swing and do the rhythm and things, but like there's different things asked of you, like different amounts of platforming, different stage hazards that are unique to even like one part of one stage that you will never see again for the rest of the game. It's crazy how it almost feels like I think we would all very much be excited for a sequel for this game. I don't even know what else they would do because it feels
I
like
don't think they should.
Different thing. I think you could totally use the setting again and like the concept
Oh, yeah.
again. Different characters. Maybe you play a different character. Maybe it's like maybe you play Peppermint this time and you go on a different adventure.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like that would be the
Peppermint
route to take for a
DLC.
sequel here of like
I
classic.
honestly
sequel
feel like sequel, because not to say they perfected it, because I mean, perfection is. I honestly feel like the best route for a sequel wouldn't be a rhythm action game, but putting their own, spin on something that's, not been done as well before.
Yeah, I feel like you got to keep the rhythm, but maybe something else instead of
Yeah.
it being a straight character action game. Could be interesting. All right, I want to talk about one other thing before we move on, which is the partner characters, because this I think is like a big selling point of Hi-Fi Rush. Is you have partner characters you can call in at any time. I'm not going to spoil who they are. The only one that I think the trailer reveals at the start is Peppermint, who is your gun-toting partner in crime, essentially. And she's got some awesome moves that you can pull off, and I love how these characters are integrated, where you have like a very quick cooldown on them. They're very easy to use again. You always have access to them, so they don't do the thing where they like take it away after you get this. This is a thing you are going to be relying on for the entire game afterwards. There's enemies that will like you need to use Peppermint's gun to take them out. There's platforming things of like you need to use the gun to take out shields to do platforming. All sorts of cool mechanics involved with this. And whenever you get new stuff, it never takes away the old stuff. So you're always building on what you can already do. And there's crazy cool attacks. There's upgrade attacks for these people. The same way that you have upgraded attacks for Chai and his main moveset, you can upgrade your secondary characters to do really cool, fun stuff. So you can get like, my favorite thing is you eventually, there's this thing called a beat hit, which is essentially a combo ender. The big twist with this is you have to hit it on beat. So this is like the exception to normal attacks where you don't need to be on beat. A beat hit you have to hit on beat. There's like a big thing on the screen that shows you when you're going to do it right. And they feel super good. They're like big flashy attacks, but you can press different buttons. So it's not like your combo ender is always the same. You can, when you unlock the ability to use Peppermint as a beat hit, you get like a crazy cool attack where she'll pull out a big laser cannon, and then you have like a on beat laser cannon blast. And they do different things. There are like different purposes to all of these. There's one down the line from a separate upgrade that doesn't even do damage but makes things more vulnerable. Like super cool stuff like that. Yeah. Anything else you want to talk about before going into spoilers?
Well, with the teleport in sidekick characters, there's some puzzles in lately with it. Yet I'm not gonna spoil setting of and things like that, but. Oh, the way that they designed having to like rapidly switch back and forth between certain swap-in characters' abilities to get through some of the platforming. Oh, that was so satisfying to beat.
It's very
yeah.
It feels like this game is the best game to get into a flow state since Titanfall 2, and that's saying something because Titanfall 2 is like it's crack for your brain on the screen. When you start, it's really hard, but when you start pulling things off right in Titanfall 2, it just feels like you're a demigod. and it's way easier to feel like that in Hi-Fi Rush because of how much they help you without making it like baby easy mode poo poo.
Yeah, that's the thing that, like, we're talking a lot about how the game helps you. This is not an easy game.
No,
even on normal, it fights back.
Yeah, which is good. It wouldn't be
Herman.
satisfying otherwise. Yeah.
Pee-wee Herman holding a tiny little copy of Hi-Fi Rush. This is crack.
Yeah.
I will say that's
the
like the
one
appeal of rhythm games too, and I think that's Hi-Fi Rush has taken that appeal and made it a lot more mainstream by integrating it with a genre that is much more appealing to a much wider array of players, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I hope more people demand good rhythm action games now, because the first
demand now.
My first experience with rhythm action was back when we were doing Metal Hellsinger for Game Pass, because I thought, like, you know what, I have literally no rhythm, I'm probably going to hate this, might as well try to broaden my horizons, and then I loved it.
It put the rhythm in your soul, Alex.
Yeah.
You can't escape the beat now.
Yep.
And I need more, and Hi-Fi Rush gave me more.
The one extremely this probably amounts to my biggest complaint for the entire game, is that compared to the rest of the soundtrack, the soundtrack for the first level isn't that great. And that's probably my only complaint, like legitimate complaint for the whole game, and it doesn't even matter. It really doesn't, because it's probably just because it's a very simple song to 1 million ease you into the the game's premise and stuff, which without saying specifically, it does mix it up. You get some things with different beats on the offbeat that are screwing up your 4/4 tempo because you're tapping the button when you think you should, and you should be waiting a beat because it's on the offbeat, and so you're not getting any of your combos done. Or they mix up time signatures and stuff. I wish they went a little further in that direction. That's the one thing where I can see there has not been a game that is this good that is like this before. We should just stick with things that are 4/4 and just go with that. I don't think I do not know music theory at all, other than what I learned in band class and school. But 4/4 is what most songs are, where there's 4 beats in a measure of music. That's 99% of music.
There's a consistent tempo and beat here, even if they're not always exactly the same. It's very consistent in terms of. I think it's not a problem, but it does mean your gameplay is not going to change feel drastically for the majority of this. It's not going to be like you're suddenly in a much higher BPM area where you're attacking much faster. It's always pretty similar. So I think that will help most people. It's not going to be hard to get back into beat.
Yeah, I think there was one level that felt slightly off.
We'll talk about that.
And
we'll talk about the offbeat. Yeah.
And I had the same problem with the Metal Hellsinger, where it's there was just one level where the BPM was so strange, and I could never get it. And then the rest of them were
that tends to happen with these types of games. We'll talk about that in a minute. All right, so final thoughts on a non-spoiler version. I think unilaterally, everyone who's played this game that we've talked to has enjoyed it. Even Wyatt, who couldn't be here, has very much enjoyed this game, though he hasn't had a chance to finish it yet. Everyone else I've talked to that played this, which is a lot of people who have just because it's on Game Pass, picked it up, have had a great time. I legitimately don't think there's a way to have a bad time with this game.
No, yeah, seriously.
If you have Game Pass, download it. If you don't have Game Pass, buy it.
Yeah, save up and buy it, the $30. I think this is the one time where I've seen the something sweep meme go around on Twitter, and it's actually been worthy of having a sweep, and then swept. The Hi-Fi Rush sweep was real, because the things that released around it were kind of mid, and so Hi-Fi Rush just kind of obliterated everything.
And I'll still say, of the games I've played this year, which has been quite a few, and quite a few good ones, this is still my game of the year. I think we made a lot of jokes about it being a game of the year contender, but I legitimately think it still is, and probably will continue to be. We'll see when Diablo IV and Final Fantasy 14 come, or 15, 16, whatever number they're on
17,
now,
18.
come out. How much people keep agreeing with that, and Breath of the Wild sequel.
I think in our Game of the Year chat, I talked about Hi-Fi Rush, because I have no sense of time, and it's an illusion that marches ever forward. But it will be the Game of the Year thing again, most likely.
Only
even
game
if it's not
in
for
history.
Game of the Year, it's going to be up for best soundtrack, no matter what.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a way that could change. Opinions are very high on this. So this is your chance. Go play the game. Come back. We're gonna talk about spoilers now. So you got a few seconds to leave. As soon as I stop the spiel, we're into spoiler territory. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, spoiler time. So how about them samurai?
Oh yeah.
Actually, you know what? I do hate that enemy.
It's one of those
not in the way
things.
that it's bad, in the way that I still haven't gotten it down yet. But when I do,
exactly. It's the classic, the Dark Souls tried and true. This thing is 90% bullshit, but the second you get it, you just hit them every single time, and it feels great because you need to be precise
and
on
this. To be
so
clear, is the enemy we were talking about of having offbeat attacks. So
yeah,
you'll have like this parry timing thing that comes up, and you have to like parry on the beat. And the parry here is just ever so slightly offbeat because it works on a different time scale for this enemy.
Yeah.
So if you are not noticing that and playing to it and thinking you're hitting it on beat like the rest of the enemies, it's not gonna work and you'll be confused.
you guys think I think against them would be the cafeteria?
Yeah.
Huh?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Where do you think the best place to practice against the samurai
cafeteria,
would be?
It's the cafeteria.
Or the training area where you can just make one.
Oh yeah.
Then fight it.
The cafeteria is so cool though.
It's very cool.
It is very out of order, but it like this is just kind of how this always happens. We just talk about shit out of order, but this is consistently.
Look, if you want a detailed breakdown of the story of Hi-Fi Rush, go play the game yourself.
that is another thing. Before the stream started,
it'd take you 20 hours.
Yeah, but before the stream started, we were like, okay, this is probably not going to be all that long, and I was like, yeah, this isn't going to be like a Nier discussion because I think our Nier Games Club was like over 2 hours, and that's because that game is like that is a dense
and Brett,
game
when you
breakdown.
Get to playing Automata, there's going to be another over 2 hours.
No, I can imagine. But Hi-Fi Rush it's literally like you can just be the dumbest person on the planet. Like try and just understand the story perfectly because they're not asking very much from you. It's perfect.
It's not groundbreaking. It's good. It's cheesy in parts.
Eventually, you get shot out of a cannon. You know, that's what to expect from this.
It feels like, and it's the worst plan ever.
It feels like the story of a like direct-to-video animated movie in the best way possible.
Yes.
It truly is just a fun time. And I think the fact that the game is like so aware that it's not taking itself seriously has really helped it. They know exactly how far they can push the buttons of their players to get them cringing, but not enough that they stop playing. I think.
Exactly. I think that works in its favor for sure because Chai towards the beginning especially is like he's not Forspoken Jan unlikable, and he's not Luke from Tales of the Abyss unlikable, but he's just cringy enough where it's like this guy's kind of like an ass. He's a little bit unsalvageably stupid. But then like he doesn't become any like smarter or more aware of himself by the end of the game. But as the game goes on, like it becomes less of a hateful cringe and more like he's at it again, that little bastard.
Look at this.
There he goes again. Making those jokes that aren't really funny, and that's why they're funny. Oh, look at him go. It's great.
Yeah. I think generally this game has a great tone. It does a very good job of Chai not being a problem and instead being a like lovable dork rather than...
It's showing Chai having fun in the game.
Yeah.
So you have fun too, by proxy.
Yes, I think that's a big deal. Like Chai isn't maybe not always enjoying what he's doing, but generally has a good outlook, and that makes it more fun to play as him because your own excitement as a player is kind of reflected back on you.
Also, watching the 3D get punched out of him is truly phenomenal.
There's the art for almost the entirety of this game is like incredible, and I say almost because there's like a couple of the 2D scenes where you could just tell that they're done by different people and you could see the styles change, and that's like, okay, they couldn't hide that. They're two different people that did the keyframes for that. But just like the transitions between 2D and 3D are just like there's no critique against them possible. They're either literally on like within a frame and are like only distinguishable like after like a transition where like okay, the 2D to 3D swap happens, Chai crashes through a window, and the second the window explodes inward, now it's in 2D, so they can get some good squash and stretch of him like rolling around or something. And there's no like weird like loading screen or like hitch in between that like separates it awkwardly like you'd have with any other game with like FMV versus in-engine stuff. I don't know how they did it. I kind of just expected that like ever since the PS1 we were just going to have a weird screen hitch every single time we had a not in-engine video come up on the screen, but the Hi-Fi Rush has proved that we've been to the moon. We can make a cutscene just happen without a loading screen. And that's insane to me that they're going to be. Yeah.
It'll never happen again.
Exactly. It's almost infuriating that there's going to be games afterward for the next 10 years that are allowed to not be able to do that. And I don't understand why. You already did it right, humanity. Why? Mm-hmm. Oh my god. Yeah. Should we attempt to go by like boss fight or something? Because I feel like
I think we should mention all the boss fights because they're all very iconic and good. Our next one after 1 million is Rekka, I believe.
Yes.
And Rekka is kind of the wrestling themed fight, of course.
Yeah.
That's how you win us over, man. It's really not that hard.
It's great. It wasn't hard. She's got a big belt, and that really does the entire job.
The big belt. Oh my god, the clanking of her gauntlets starting the fight.
Yeah.
Yes, and it starts the music.
Yeah.
Great details. Her fight also has some really interesting stuff. Of the first half of it is pretty standard, and then she gets a bunch of electric attacks that you can't take and have to dodge and actually like move around and play around and wait for openings. It kind of introduces the more dance.
All the boss fights just have these like really nice, intricate second phases that completely flip things from before. It's
they put a huge amount of effort into them.
Yeah, you know what this fight actually reminded me of almost immediately the second that the second phase hit, Ryan.
Yep.
This game felt almost exactly like the Colonel Volgin fight in Snake Eater because he does the same thing. He's just big buff electric character who will shock you from a distance, and if you don't do the thing right, you will get shocked and you can't avoid it. It plays very similarly. Obviously, it's like faster and on rhythm, and you have a lot more options as Chai than you do as Naked Snake. But immediately, like, it almost feels like they had to have been like, oh, this is a good video game thing to look at.
I think big buff electric person is also just a good sell. Like that's.
Oh, it is. It is.
I might be a little deranged because I think at first I thought the boss you're going to liken it to was the Sekiro gorilla.
That's evil and no.
Absolutely not. That gorilla sucks. I also want to point out here, like at this point in the game, you don't have the ability to parry. You don't unlock parrying until much later. So this is a
halfway through
fight that you have to dodge, and that also makes it feel really rewarding if you're working with a limited tool set here. But it doesn't feel limited because the game does a really good job of pacing out upgrades and new buttons to press so that you're never overwhelmed, but you're always getting something new to play with, which is super satisfying. The music here, I feel like in this fight was a little bit more forgettable. Not necessarily.
I think it was in-house. I'm pretty sure.
I don't know that it was in-house, but it's slower paced than other boss fights. There's a lot of like dead time here, which isn't again not a bad thing. It's going to be to your taste of music, very much so. Like any of these fights could be best or worst fight to you depending on what music you like. I think for a lot of us, we were here for the 9 Inch Nails.
I was here for the 9 Inch Nails.
Yeah, it wasn't the strongest boss fight soundtrack, but otherwise, I think, very fun fight. This is the first one that I think I had to retry. Of like, I totally did not understand the electric bit for a minute and got smashed into the ground. So, what a shame.
I had to go after Mimosa, I think 5 or 6 times before it was
Mimosa. We'll get to Mimosa.
We will get to Mimosa. I think this is also the point where you realize that like this game's not going to hold back, even if.
Oh yeah.
Because I remember early on, Brett, you had messaged me like, "I'm worried this is going to make the game too easy with like everything being on beat." Yeah. I feel like that feeling probably went away.
You're wrong.
But by this point, it was not a problem anymore.
Yeah.
Full confidence at that point.
All right. Yeah. After Rekka, do we go directly into, because the next one doesn't have a main boss, and then we go into lava stage,
Zonzo?
right? Yeah.
We
Then
go
we
to
go
the
to
lava stage
Zanzo.
after that. Yeah, you're right.
Wow. Huh.
Because
So
I feel like the stage, there's more regular stage in between these two
Yeah.
fights, but there is. I think this is where the boss
yeah,
pacing starts to slow down a little bit, and you
because
are
they
doing more regular fighting.
because they introduce so many mechanics to you in between
Yeah.
Yeah.
these two fights. And like it's not like the boss pace slows down, sure, but it does not get boring.
There's
It
Well,
does
things to
not mean
replace
the
it.
game
It
gets
doesn't
boring at
feel
all.
like
This
you're
is
missing something.
this is where you get the parry, right? Because of the laser
Yes.
turret.
Yes, Sanzo, you get the parry. It's with the parry in this game works on rhythm like everything else. If you hit it, you'll do a parry on the beat, and if you are getting hit on that beat, it won't hurt you. Magical, super useful.
Crazy.
Hard to
Groundbreaking.
get the timing down on, but once you do, you can parry basically everything in the game. There's a couple things you can't, but it's largely everything is parryable. And there's also, of course, parry attacks you can pull off later on. You have parry partner attacks, which
Of
are
course.
super fun. Of like, one of my favorites is I think you get one with we'll talk about oh my lord, Wind Staff Lady, Corsica, later
Yes.
on, that it just knocks everyone into the air and is super fun.
So
And you get
good.
like an
So
upgrade for
good.
it that just makes them stay up there for a super long time.
Oh.
Which is really
It's
fun.
really fun.
Yeah, love the parry system. It feels super satisfying. And dodging is also still always useful, just because it gets you out of the way of things. Yeah, this level goes hard. I think Zanzo's level is super strong
It's a
because they're
long level.
throwing a lot of stuff at you. It's a long level. There's like multiple different environments here. If you have
Yeah.
like the
And then
lava
when
part of the
we
stage, and then the lab part.
yeah, and then when we get to the actual Zonzo thing, it's a really cool departure from a normal boss fight.
Yeah,
Yes.
because it's not you don't fight. Zanzo really wants you to fight a big, strong robot version of him, like a video game. But instead, you have to stop him from making the big robot Zanzo by making him use up all of his budget and defunding him, which is
Yes.
absolutely hilarious. This is one of those things where because the villains are like big, conglomerate
It's
corporate
Vandalay
assholes that
Corporation.
yeah, they
Which is
want
a
to ruin the
Vandal
Seinfeld
world
Industries, which
reference.
is a Seinfeld
based, yeah. They want to like mind control everyone or whatever is their big thing that we have to stop them from doing because that's not a good thing to do. But every time it's like all of the devs are game developers in the AAA industry or something like that, and there's nobody to stop them from just critiquing the industry by making all of the people at the top into just different kinds of moronic idiots that blow all their money or like just
Yes.
torture all the people that work under them. It's amazing. This is another one of those things that it could be super annoying if you wrote it incorrectly, but I don't. There's not a single joke at the expense of the AAA game industry that does not like hit it out of the park. It's incredible. The whole section where you're just forcing Zanzo to build more and more incredulous, just like
That the
stimulations that make him
hologram
a
budget.
giant. Yeah. There's like just you're just
A
making
volcano.
him increase scope basically. You're
Yeah.
increasing his scope to the point where he runs out of money and tries to do the next big thing and effectively
It's how
dies. It's
tons of games
hilarious.
fail.
Yeah,
It's like
I was
Pushing
also
scope
laughing
too far.
so hard.
he constantly JoJo poses.
Yes.
It does constantly JoJo pose. There's menacing characters on the screen at certain points. This is also the point where we meet Macaron, who is
Yes.
your punch buddy, who can break armor on enemies.
I was your punch buddy and pacifist in
Yes.
this
Pacifist
game.
who does
I
a really
love
good
that
job at
character dynamic.
punching.
Yeah.
He's your friendly scientist scientist buddy. You also meet Cinnamon here, who is your therapist robot. And this kind of rounds out your cast for most of the game, and these characters are great. Like, I think that's
Yes.
a huge strength of this game, is every character they introduce is just super fun to have around. They
Phenomenal
all
voice
fill really
acting,
different
too.
roles.
Yes. If I need to
Go for
just
it.
to high five
Please.
Gush for a second if I may.
Yeah.
And anything if you have your story set in like a historical setting, if you're doing historical fiction or whatever, that's if you're doing your thing in the like in World War II or whatever, when not that the army isn't super racist now, but when it was super racist, there's your excuse to have a all white guy cast. Okay, sure, but we're in sci-fi, and Star Wars is still not having just like aliens be a part of the main cast, or even just like actual human beings with different like skin color and gender not being like inserted into the cast properly. It's very strange. So when I see that Hi-Fi Rush has a cast of people that all look and sound completely different from each other, it makes me so happy that they all have different accents. I am so happy that there's just so many accents from there's Irish, there's British, there's all over the place from just characters that may not even stereotypically look like they would have an accent from that part of the world. I don't care. I need less of the same 5 voice actors and actresses to be in every single game ever, and more of just these random people from all over the world to make characters sound different, because I think that is a huge part of why the cast of Hi-Fi Rush is just crazy successful, because their writing is good and that's great, but the next level of they all are able to have their own personalities because they all sound completely different from each other. It's just crazy how we're not there yet with this crazy push for diversity that oftentimes doesn't work very well.
Well, it just feels natural here. Like there's no one ever calls it out, which means it just feels like, hey, this is totally natural.
Like definitely in the spoiler category for things, but character designs have a purpose.
Yeah. Yes. Character designs are all phenomenal. They're very good.
When you realize it, and when you realize, oh yeah, those two are very
similar looking. Yeah.
Which is funny because I do think we're talking about Kale, who at this point you probably know is the big enemy you're going up against. Mm-hmm. I feel like most people probably thought he was like Peppermint's dad or something rather than sibling.
Yeah, I was like, there's something
he looks a
similar
good bit
there.
older, but
yeah,
the hair color and the eye colors and whatnot match, so it's clear to tell there's a relation. But the way the character is presented made me feel like, oh, that's like a weird dad or something, not a weird brother. Mm-hmm. But it feels natural either way. I think it's just a case of it's hard to tell age with these types of character designs. So
yeah,
doesn't necessarily come across super well, but that's not a problem. Designs are great. Voice acting is also very good across the board. Incredible. I think. Say what you will, some people I think don't love Corsica's accent, but I don't know. I didn't have a problem with it. I love it at all. I thought it was great.
It's fun. Oh, also Lucille.
Yeah, Lucille's great. All the robots have great voices. They also sometimes have accents. So
yeah,
this could be me doing another British person. Are all the same people again?
Oh no, Alex.
But I am not going to say that it is the same person. But I am wondering, and I'm going to play Hi-Fi Rush immediately after this if I don't collapse from exhaustion. I need to find out if the person who voiced Lucille is the same person who voiced Failsafe in Destiny.
That's just such a random pick that I don't care.
No one aside from you is going to be able to tell that, Alex.
I went back.
I have to look it up.
I went back and watched the Anthem stream again specifically to comb to the part where I yelled at you for that. It is so funny because I forgot that it had happened, and I was like, what happened that I need to tell this person about? Oh my god, that's right. And I needed to find it to show them. And I listened to it again, and I was like, that's 1 in a million right there. That's something like that. That's never gonna happen again for the rest of my life. That's beautiful.
I wonder how many views our Anthem stream has.
Like 158.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it also got like 50 in the first day. It's a Anthem, popular game that people want to hear retrospectives on, I'm sure.
Big ticket item.
Big ticket item.
Also me say just wild and wacky things, I guess.
Yeah, well, speaking of wild and wacky, let's talk about some of the gameplay mechanics they introduced in this part of the game, because you unlock quite a few more things here. There's like rail grinding now. You have the cool like rail segments where you use your special magnet hand to fly along a rail on the screen and like dodge things. I thought that was super fun. They don't overuse it, which I think is often a problem with these types of minigames where they then shove them everywhere. But here it feels like they're like, hey, we're going to do this fun segment. You'll see it again later, but not super often. So, you you'll know what to do when it happens again. But as of right now, this is your main level where it's a thing. And that feels super good. It feels a lot like Zelda dungeon design to me. Of they're each introducing a new thing that is the point of that level, and then it might come back up later again, but it's never going to be as much of a focus as the first time you do it, which feels super good. Yeah, I think this was great. The boss fight with Zanzo is very funny because there's dialogue constantly going on. It's all very well written and funny. And then it ends, and of course it builds right up as if there's going to be another boss fight, and then nope, it's a punchline, and he goes down.
Yep. It's so
all right.
After Zanzo, who was?
It's
Corsica, right?
It is Corsica next, yeah. So it's
Corsica... and then because she was there for the Mimosa fight.
Yeah. So I did not pick up immediately on the peppermint kale relation. I picked up immediately that Corsica was going to have a face turn.
Dude, there's something about Corsica's character design. You immediately go, she's a good guy.
I think it's the hair. It's something with the hair. The hair was
hair. I think softer face features as well.
Yeah,
but it's hard face features mean villain.
Yeah,
mostly.
It didn't make it any less satisfying when it happened and she did a face turn. It actually made it more satisfying because I was like, yes, when I want it to happen, it actually happened. I'm so happy now.
Yeah.
But her level is one of my favorites in the game because it's just like it feels like it just feels like a Zelda dungeon. It feels like a 3D Zelda dungeon. Where it's really enforcing.
The whole gimmick is you're working your way through the security section of the tower.
Yeah. And there's like a hub area that you come back to multiple times because you can pick which path you want to go through, which is cool. I love when games do that.
It's got great visuals of like you know how far you're progressing in the area by like the lights coming on in the room.
Oh yeah,
powering through.
Yeah. I think this was definitely one of the areas that had the most of these were the types of buttons that Wide was having trouble with.
The samurai specifically.
Oh, okay. No, I was thinking of there's these buttons where instead of just they're smashing the heavy attack, it's this weird combination of
to make like the energy beam connect, right? Yeah. It's a similar thing as the samurai thing, but it's actually very smart, which actually just hit me that they did that right now. But that's actually training you for the boss fight of the area because they do the same exact thing.
With the
because up until you fight Corsica, you only have one button to worry about for those parry like attacks.
It's parry, and then is it a
dodge?
It is a dodge. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I think this level does such a great job of introducing new mechanics. I think the one misstep with this part of the game is the samurai being here and not later. I don't know how far back I would have pushed it, but I do think like the whole game through, this is the first level where you fight the samurai enemy, which their big gimmick is they're much higher threat enemies. It's easy to like you want to clear out what's around them and then fight them one-on-one because they are hefty when you're actually fighting them one-on-one. They have multi-hit attacks. They have things that you need to parry that have like huge radiuses. They have a special attack that you need to like learn how to time the button prompts to, the same way you did the lasers and Zanzos. But the offbeat thing I think makes them much harder than most enemies because there's no tutorial for the offbeat thing. And I don't necessarily think there should be, because I think it does feel fine for it to be a thing that you have to learn yourself, but it means that this is a wall, and it feels like it's really early, because I don't think any other enemy was as tough to fight as the samurai.
No, yeah.
At any point in the game.
It's weird, because as like a Averse effect that it does, this is part of why the samurai are really easy to deal with later on, is because they show them like pretty early. But I do also get what you're saying, where it's like people that aren't like true like the LED gamer chair gamers are not gonna like pick up on it immediately, and that could probably be frustrating. So I definitely understand that.
It's not even just the frustration, it's just I felt like there was not a thing that challenged me as much as them for the rest of the game. Which might be like a unique thing, but
I still consider like the samurai somewhat like they're fun until that part, but they also do get annoying until you understand it. One of the only other enemy that got like as annoying as that for me were the birds.
But
you don't have to deal with them too much, which is great. But
there's like 3 in the whole game or something.
Yeah, the bird I never had an issue with.
But bird up, I guess.
Yeah, that might be because I think I just used my special attack anytime they appeared and they died, so
that makes
I
sense.
really had to worry about them. Yeah, I think this level is great. I know Wyatt particularly hated the fight with Corsica.
Which he's just wrong. Can we just say that he's wrong? There's an opinion here, and he's just wrong
because it's not a fight.
Another really fun, like, different take on the boss battle. It's you're talking with them, and the writing again making them seem like people.
Yeah, and the music is
Working
great here. I think the music does a great job of like keeping tension, but not feeling like fight music. And there's also I love the intro to this fight of you feel like you did a good job and you're going through the vents to like sneak up and try to steal a password, and then you mess up and fall on her head, and then a bunch of comedy gags happen, and it's really setting you off on the wrong foot. I think it's a really great way to kind of sell the character of Chai and also Corsica and like show their relationship at the start here. Really fun. I think this is just a great intro scene to both of these characters interacting. Also as a note, like Chai got captured before. We don't need to talk about it, but there is like a moment that you get captured and immediately break out of prison.
Yeah.
One of the other. So I don't know whether we want to actually keep this under wraps because it's a genuinely hilarious moment at the end of the Corsica boss fight.
We're in spoilers. We should talk about the fight itself before we talk about the end of the fight, probably.
Yeah.
Because the reason that we said it's a fight where you don't actually fight is because you land on Corsica's head, and of course she's pissed that she's just actually really mad. So the whole reason she's fighting you, she's just mad that you landed on her head and you messed up her whole security bureau, and so she's gonna kick the shit out of you. And so you're fighting, and all your friends are talking in your ear like, Chai, you pissed her off. You need to make her like calm down. You really need to make her calm down. And so you're not actually like attacking her; she's attacking you, and you need to deflect or dodge anything. And there's just segments where you're just pacing around each other in a circle while the tension music is building. And it's the boss is 90% dialogue, but it's all really well written. Like you said, it makes the boss sound like they're a person. And Corsica's just like, you ruined my career, you like hurt me or whatever, I don't understand, Vandalay is doing the right thing or whatever. And after a while, Chai realizes that he's doing a really bad job at making her calm down, and so he actually says something like, wait, I'm doing a really bad job at making her calm down. I'm just going to make her so angry that she messes up.
Yes.
And everyone's like,
fires
what?
herself out.
Yeah, and then you do that. And it's so satisfying getting all, because the parry timings get like really, really like egregiously long. But it gets super satisfying to hit those correctly. And the game's pretty generous for like, even if you screw up, it takes a lot to kill you in this fight. Like you could screw up a lot before you die.
Yeah, you have a lot of chances here. This is not a fight they want you to replay.
Yeah, exactly. But I think this does work well because it is like a one-time thing. You can't keep doing this more because it would lose its charm pretty much. Yeah. Aside from New Game Plus, obviously, because then you're going through the whole game again. But you finish the fight, and immediately 2 things can happen. Because you knock Corsica into the air, and this is probably the only time in the entire game that a quick time event comes up on the screen. But you can miss the quick time event to catch Corsica very heroically and just let her fall to the ground, and Chai goes like, oh, jeez, like looks behind him, like, screwed up
Peppermint's
so bad.
like disappointed voice comes over the going, Chai.
Which Brett, you caught her first, right?
Yes, I caught her.
I missed her on my first attempt.
Yeah, my Yakuza reactions are trained to always keep an eye out for QTE.
I was so beat after those long parries. I'm just like, thank God it's over. What's that? No.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. And then you walk out. You either pick her up off the ground or you already have her in your arms, and like, okay, we got the key. We got Corsica. She seemed like she was cool. We don't want to actually like kill her or anything because we just have her key. So let's get out of here. Bring her. We could bring her to our side, okay? And you slam her head on the wall and then on the door frame unintentionally, but just because Chai is stupid and he's just holding her like long ways, so her head's like hanging off over here because he's just like, and he just slams her head.
Corsica's like a very tall person. and Chai is not. So it's also like he's carrying someone much larger than himself.
It's like he has to turn sideways to fit her through like the door frame, but he doesn't until after he rams her head into it multiple times, and then like after the last one, he's like, "Oh my god!" And he's just about to step through the door, and the sliding door closes and hits her head again. It's so good. It's so good. It's a disservice to just explain it. You need to watch it or let it happen in the game because it is so fucking funny.
Yep. It's also followed by a great sequence of the like train section of this boss coming down and then destroying both of you very quickly. You having to regroup. Corsica got super heavily injured by this, and it's basically Corsica realizing that Kale doesn't care, like doesn't have any respect for her, and is actively just doesn't want to deal with it. So then you have the bit of like you end up saving Corsica's life by having Peppermint apply some enhancements to her because she had not had any like technical enhancements like everyone else did. And instead of having some weird arc of her being confused about enhancements, she's just cool with it, and then we move on. And I think that was great.
Thank God.
To me, that was the moment I was so ready for there to be a weird character interaction, because I think Western media has prepped me for characters being grateful is not a thing we can do. People can't be grateful for something that someone else did. So instead we need to jump into a combative situation. But no, we're just immediately, she's like, oh yeah, thanks for saving my life. Let's go do some cool stuff. That is very satisfying. All right, next bit is the underground section, which has...
There's one thing. After you do the train section, if you just went through like that combined with the Corsica fight combined with the security level is like, all right, I'm ready to like go to bed. Like my hands are sweaty. That was like either hard or like very like engaging to the point where like I am gamer tired now. I am gamered out. And right after that, the game has the balls to have like a huge robot appear and be like, "Oh my god, I'm going to have to fight this too." And then I think Kale is like, "Look, you made me waste all this money on this gigantic robot that looks like you would have to fight it, but I don't even have the desire to do that right now. So you'll have to make all the people who made it feel bad about it never being used, and then it's never used ever again, and you don't fight it."
Really funny.
So funny. Oh my god.
Yep.
This whole game is an in-joke for industry professionals.
It truly is.
I really think, that's a lot of it. After that we have you are re-going through to try to gather some more access codes. You're trying to get to Mimosa, I believe, is the next section of the campaign.
Yeah.
So you go through the underground and have an amazing sequence of fights below the city. There's like a really cool cutscene of all your tag team members coming in and helping you get onto the tram to like go to this next section. Just super fun. You fight your way through that and get to the museum, which is another really cool level. I think this level has a great aesthetic, and then just the idea of you're going through like this museum section and like talking to all the robots outside of it, and like the little festival going on.
Filled with a bunch of optional dialogue and displays and stuff that you can see. And then there's one of my favorite just funny references in there is like in the back in like some supply closet they have a version of what's the book the painting cover of Saturn eating his son.
Yes. Yes. I saw that too.
But it's like the robots and it's so funny.
Yeah. It's just like someone had fun doing that, and they were just like, we could put that in the game if you like. I think people would laugh, and then they did.
Along with these just like amazing Easter eggs. I think there's one in each level. I haven't found all of them yet. But there's the Tango Gameworks snail just getting in horrifying situations all over.
There's Snail. There's the two main characters from the Evil Within games, but as robots.
And they have really long dialogue sections written.
It's really funny because they're like trying to like be detectives and analyze the situation, but they're not in the right game, so it doesn't fit at all, and they're not actually doing anything. So it's really funny. I think they're also in every level too, but I could be wrong. Maybe after the first one.
I think they are in every level. I believe they are.
Good.
This is like the Evil Within investigator is such a great little in joke as well. Love that.
When I was replaying the first level to find the secret post game stuff, I found like a character that I completely missed the first time. There's a robot sunbathing on a roof.
Oh,
Of course there is. All right.
But on
Yeah.
the museum level, this is the one with the wacky, quirky, swing beat, jazzy big band song.
Yes.
Where you
Queen of
think
swing.
you want to your brain. It's 4/4 song. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's so I'm gonna keep pressing all my attacks on the 1, 2, 3, 4. However, this is a swingy, jazzy big band song. So all of the snare drum hits that your brain wants to associate with being on the 1, 2, and 3 and 4 are on the offbeat, which means that it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and it hits with if I just clapped, I don't know if you could hear it, but if you're watching, you could see the impact of my hands. It's
And
in between the numbers. And so even like even me understanding that, I still was doing it wrong the entire level.
Yeah, because
This
if
was
you try to
probably
use
the
the snare
hardest
drums
level
as a
in the game.
guide, like most other levels, you're going to be hitting on the wrong timing.
Yeah, which I think I think it's a good thing. I think it's interesting because it's forcing your brain to think differently. They're using a part of music as an interesting gameplay mechanic that I wish they explored more, but they explored to the extent they could have in the first game that they did it in, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was the song that I think screwed all three of us up, probably.
Yeah, and I definitely got used to this one, but I think the way that I got used to it was more just muscle memory of the rest of the game rather than particularly learning the beat here, because I think a lot of this is that because the snare drums are on an offbeat and you're hitting attacks on beat still, it feels awkward to try to time using that. But not to a degree that I ever really noticed it, so I don't think it's a huge issue. But I think it will be noticeable when you play this level of like, oh, it's going to feel a little bit different, and you're going to have to adjust to timing things right instead of having to rely on music.
Before the Corsica boss fight too, they have like these little level interludes. You're in a 2D side scroller.
Yes.
Yeah.
In
There's
parts
2D side
that
scroller
are
bits.
really nice. And there's a left shark joke.
There's a left shark joke in
What?
2023 that somehow still manages to hit. I don't know how they got away with that one, but they
I
did.
think because it ends very quickly. It
Yeah,
doesn't go on too long. Yeah, so this museum level kind of teaches you a lot of the history of the company, which is the story part of it. You're learning about like who established Vandelay, and you're hearing more about Peppermint reacting to everything, which kind of clues you in that something's not right here.
Is that and that the woman who started Vandelay, it's just a silhouette of her. So they don't completely give away the character resemblance.
Which is funny because I think she resembles them the least. But
yeah, it's kind of weird.
Well, I think their
Gale's
color
really
palette is
resembling.
pretty much exactly the same with the blue and the light blonde hair.
Yeah. This level's got some fun enemies to fight, but I think the bits here that stand out is you're really starting to mix all of your character's abilities together. You're using all the special call-in abilities. You're using Corsica's and Macaron and Peppermint in sequence and having to do things that are timed, so you're getting a lot more capable at platforming and finding a lot more secrets. And this is also like, these things were in the earlier levels, but because you didn't have the characters that could use them, you weren't able to do them, which means there's a reason to go back and replay them. And some of them are like big sections of level that are uncovered. Like that has made starting to replay the game very fun because there's still a lot left to find, which is great. I think that's a really cool thing to kind of build in some replayability here, and especially because they address it in the game. Like if you walk up to them before you have those characters, you'll get like a codec call type thing that's like, hey, what is this door? And they'll go, I don't know about that. That might be something for like, I don't know, when you finish everything.
Yeah.
Have like some little clue ins of like it's an end game thing.
I still went up and tried to interact with all the ones that I found.
Of course you did, because they're big and they glow. So of course you're going to interact with it. Yeah. So this level I think is just a great kind of mix of everything you learned before.
Yeah.
Then we get to the Mimosa boss fight, which for me is one of my favorite fights in this game, I think.
It's very
which I'm going to say for every fight. So.
I felt like there were a lot more I mean, there weren't, but it felt like there were a lot more phase changes for Mimosa.
I think because Mimosas are super dramatic. Of like, every phase feels really different. So her whole deal is she's like the jazz swing music star and is going to fight you using the power of her crazy wingsuit and swing music. And so you're fighting on a giant concert stage that is normal at first.
Put on a show.
The gimmick here that might take people a little bit to get used to is that she has a shield that you have to break before you can damage her. You have to like break her wing stuff and then you can fight her. She also introduces like the Gundam bits that you have to parry, which I think at least messed up me a good bit until I figured out that, oh yeah, you parry them after you see the flash. They work like other things, and then you parry like in a pattern, which is good because those will come back later, and they're introducing it now in a way where it's not super stressful, and even if you fail completely, you can still finish this fight without ever dodging those. But there are clues into them. Yeah, I think this fight's super fun. The music for here is great. It has some really dramatic phase changes of going into, like, the stage goes dark, and then the spotlights over the characters you have to fight, which is super cool and very visual. This has the shark joke in it, where you, like, jump out of the left shark suit to start the fight, which is very funny. Yeah,
I still don't have the timing down for when, I think it's in her last phase, when all the band members line up on alternate spaces on each side of the stage and just laser blast in between.
You just break them.
You can just
you kill them, and then they don't do the attack.
Corsica came in very, very handy for this fight because her ability to just make a tornado to stun a bunch of people. Also, like, it throws all the people up in the air, but it also does stun damage to her shield. Yes. So I just kept spamming her the whole fight. This is
totally that is why this fight works this way, is to get you to use Corsica.
Exactly, yeah, because you just got her. Makes sense.
Because I think the big thing a lot of people might jump to, like, Corsica's attack doesn't do damage, so a lot of people might assume that it's not good. Super useful. One of the best attacks in the game because it stuns everything so easily. I think this fight's great. There's a bit where she has, like, a big section of robots that will move across the stage and do little dance moves with the spotlights, and then, like, use their AoE attacks, and you can kill them before they do that to make the AoEs go away, or you can just run away and stand in the corner and they won't hit you. There's a cool bit where you have to, like, do a jumping puzzle to get to her across the stage as, like, the rhythm stuff is happening, and you have to, like, break some stuff. Tons of mechanics here that are all very easy to grasp and very fun. And then it turns into Guitaru Man. Don't know if anyone else who's played Guitaru Man.
Bass.
It's just a battle of the bands at the end. You're just like,
exactly.
Which is really funny because Chai has established that he can't play the guitar. It's all a gimmick. It's very, like, audible that he's not playing well as well. They don't try to make it sound particularly good. You could tell he's just rocking out, and so you have a like rock band battle against Mimosa, and it's very fun. I think it's just a super fun fight, and when it gets depleted, this is the moment where you're like, oh, we do just kill them. They are dead.
Yes.
The bad one's fully dead. She rockets off into space and it explodes.
Blown up.
Pilgrim style.
This game takes no prisoners. It's a little bit of the evil within bleeding through. We're not going to consider the morality of killing all these people. We're just going to let it happen.
Don't ask questions about where the giblets come from. Just pay attention to the funny jerk.
Yes. Next, I think, is again one of my favorite levels in the game, but of course I've said that for every level because they're all really good.
Yeah.
Is it
Rockford
level
next?
Yes, it's Rockford's level.
I love
this one. You're going through
level.
Like the actual building of Vandalay and seeing their customer-facing level.
Yeah.
Is this after the cannon that you get launched out of, or before?
I think so. I think you get launched out of the cannon to fight Rockford, right? Because the cannon is to get to Rockford's room, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Wasn't the plan to shoot you into Rockford's office?
And then you miss and you hit a blimp.
Yeah,
you get launched into the cafeteria.
But I have to go ballistic at the fact that in the year of our Lord 2023, some absolute bastard from the West put a Xenogears reference in their video game that is on Game Pass that you can purchase for $30 and that people are calling Game of the Year. There's a Xenogears reference in it.
And it's super obvious one, too.
it's if you don't know it, it's just like, wow, this is weird. This must be an Evangelion reference because character is sitting in chair in the black void while dialogue happens.
No.
Literally, that is like frame for frame exactly what the majority of the entire second disc of Xenogears is, which is one of my favorite games, by the way, where it's just we need to make these character resolutions happen. Square is not giving us the budget, so we're just going to Evangelion it, and the main character is just going to sit in a chair in the middle of this black void while this text crawl is happening over him and images are being projected behind him as if on a screen so that we can make it look like we put some level of budget into this so you can see what's happening. And then there's a swinging and spinning cross pendant on the other side of the background because that's a very big symbol in Xenogears. And I forget what they made spin around in the background behind Shy when this was happening, but all of this
Oh my god.
my smile was too big for my skull. It was so stupid. I don't know how they. I don't know how.
And I will say, as someone, because I didn't know this is a Xenogears reference, because I haven't played Xenogears yet, even though I really want to. Love Xenoblade, but even having no idea that this was a Xenogears reference and it happening, it's still funny because it's so absurd.
Yeah,
that it
exactly.
still works, which is really funny. It just kind of happens. You're like, I think for me, I made the connection of like this almost feels like the opening of Always Sunny.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, and I think it worked well, even without the knowledge of it being a reference.
This is one of the levels where they bring back the rail grinding.
Yeah, big rail section.
Rail reappears.
There's that. I just really like the aesthetic too of like the floating areas of this, and then at one point you climb on a giant statue of Kale.
It's just such. There's so much great color in these levels, and all of them have like different color schemes, which is so important to having a different identity and making them feel unique. And this one's just very bright and very like mishmash colors. There's like an office reference at one point of you're going through the offices of the robots and learning about the robots in their offices, complaining about like raises and whatnot.
I think there's like a stapler in Jello or something like that.
Yeah. Which when you can make JoJo references and Office references and not make me want to jump off of a bridge, you've won. You've won the game of life because they're there in the same way as the Xenogears thing, where they're put in such a way where it's like I might not get it, but it's so absurd that I can't help but smile or laugh because it's just weird. And I know in the back of my head that the people who do know what it is are gonna really like it. And that's a plus because this is a happy game. They're throwing multiple Twin Peaks references at you. They have you in the checkerboarded room where everyone's snapping their fingers and talking backward. Like they have more Twin Peaks references than any other singular property in this game, and I don't know why. But it's awesome.
This is great.
But this level also has, I think, the best song in the whole game, and it's like Game Over or something like that. Either the band or
the Rockford boss fight.
No, the one that plays when you crash through the window into the cafeteria, and it's just like a 45-minute rampage.
That song is
like
phenomenal.
It's
so good.
Dude.
It's also like one of the only non-boss combat encounters that has licensed music, I believe.
Yeah. I think one of like 2 or 3.
Well, speaking about, oh my god,
there's also the one where you're running out of. Other important note that your big escape from Zanzo is on a rail grinding section. There's like a crazy cool chase sequence that happens that has its own music.
There's I think the two most memorable fights in this game for me are the one where you get a dimension punched out of you, like when you go from 3D to 2D with that because you try to reason with a robot that's trying to kill you, and then the other one is Rockford and his transformations and the scene transitions.
So good.
Oh, let's go somewhere a little more private.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Rockford right now. Rockford's big gimmick is he's the wolf in sheep's clothing, and you have a werewolf boss fight. And of course, the music for this is absolutely perfect. They could not have chosen a better song. This is like the one track that I think is notably worse in the original music and not the streamer. Or is worse if you're in streamer mode than the licensed music. Because Wolfgang Mozart is perfect for this, and the remix they use is phenomenal. And in the streamer mode, you don't get that remix. It's still a good song, but it does not have the same hit here.
Yeah,
because there are
remixing
attacks.
Mozart?
There are attacks in Roquefort's sequence that hit on every single beat in a row, like on the degree of scale that the song operates to. So on the streamer mode, those don't feel quite the same, but in the licensed music mode, it's perfect. Roquefort's whole gimmick is great. I think this fight was pretty easy to me compared to the others, but still very fun.
It felt I still got it on like the first or second try, but I think this fight definitely had me on the ropes more than any other fight. Like I was constantly low on health from having trouble with parrying and
Yeah, I'm remembering like the last room that he brings you to with all the lasers coming at you. That gave me trouble. I still did it and have fun, but I was like, okay, this is far more of a challenge than the first 2/3 of the fight.
This was definitely one where it got harder as it went on. But I love the visuals of this. You end up in a Scrooge McDuck room of gold flying everywhere. There's tons of visual effects on the screen. When you hit him, he falls into a giant pile of gold and it like splashes. And of course, the way that you finish Roquefort is not by attacking him, but by him getting a ton of money dumped on his head.
Yep.
Which is great.
Oh, the Q4 profits are in. Gets his head domed in.
It's absolutely wonderful. Love this fight. Love the boss design for him. He could be alive. You don't know. Roquefort maybe survived that.
Well,
maybe not.
It's so cool with the like, okay, I'll save my life and everything like that. The animation for his transformation.
So good.
That's good.
So good.
That pushes the boundaries of 3D animation in a video game right there, I think, because so much just comes out of nowhere. I don't know how they did it. It's crazy. It's so cool.
Very good. All right, we're going to move quickly to the next track because we've still got 2 more tracks to cover here. The next one is Achieving Harmony or the Needle Drop is the name of it. The thing with this is it's the pre-boss fight for the final boss. This is like the bit where you learn Kale's whole deal. And it's, of course, not that he wants to mind control everybody. It's that he wants to use technology that has the potential to mind control everybody to make them kind of want to buy a product. Really funny.
Which is exactly how, subliminal messaging works in
it's very corporate thinking,
in
which I think is hilarious. I also think this is, to me, like the moment where I knew the game worked, because there's a section here at the start where it's playing like indie movie music because you're locked in a cage and you're having to like recall your adventure with your friends and rebuild this like harmonic sequence to break the thing, and there's like flashes of people saying things. And it actually hit me in the feels. And I was like, okay, I legitimately, this goofy game that I didn't have any idea existed, that has a ridiculous story and tons of comedy, actually made me feel really strong feelings. And I think that's incredible. Like, this is the moment where I knew the story worked.
And then you play as a cat.
And then you play as a cat later. We're not there yet.
That's
next time.
That's around the same time.
That's after the level.
Yeah, this is the previous level. We still got a whole other boss to get to, Alex.
When they're playing the borderline car seat headrest alt rock music, it's literally they struck every single chord. I'm a sucker for the best friends working together attack every single time. It could be in the dumbest anime I've ever seen in my life that I don't even care about. It will always, without fail, get me at least misty-eyed.
It's a wild thing,
and I hate it.
It felt earned.
They did it so well.
Like it felt earned, and that's always the part where this like friendship attack thing falls flat. Is that it just doesn't feel earned? But here it felt earned,
and it's incredible because I feel like every single moment like that before this has been a thing that you can watch. But you get to play through it this time because that's the entire first part of this level. And because all of your friends are running around separately, you work with them for them to help you. You do like versions of your combo attacks with them, or they move a platform in front of you so that you can jump.
And the like setup for this level is so much fun. Of you're being in like an active construction zone and constantly moving between different areas. Yeah. They set up the boss at the very start of the level, so you're kind of having to dodge their like big attacks as you're moving through. You're moving quickly here to help, and you're running into dead ends, and then your friends come on and help you and do things. But of course, despite you being separated, you can still call them in for the special attacks because, hey, they hand-waved teleporter technology, so we're not going to do the thing where we take away your cool abilities for this moment. You still get to play the game, which feels great. You eventually get to an actual fight here. You get Cinnamon gets a cool moment, which is great because you normally don't see Cinnamon in combat. And then you have some more rail grinding sections, and then some super cool stuff. And then you build up to this final, like, short boss fight where you're gathering all these things, and then you have to play as Cinnamon.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Play as Cinnamon to get the big laser. It's super fun.
Oh my God. Cool.
This is an entirely wonderful section. That is like a great. We're all gonna do the friendship thing together, and actually group up here to accomplish something, which felt really cool. I think it did a great job.
Yeah, and it makes what happens next also feel more poignant because this level kind of serves up to what happens at the end, where you get to the top of the tower thing or whatever, and you meet the creator of Vandalay, who is Peppermint and Kale's mom, who's all nice. Oh my God! Well, you got here. You saved me. She's been brainwashed, and all of your hopes and dreams come crashing down, and all of your friends are trapped in a cage. Again, or like behind some big like barrier or something, and you get like separated from them as Chai and get taken away to be brainwashed as well, right? So this is the lowest point the characters go through is right after their highest point, which is always very satisfying to me. I love to see all these fictional characters go through what they think the best moment of their lives are, only to be dragged through the mud. It makes me very, very happy and satisfied as a sadistic audience member, because then what happens after is always the really cool shit, which this game does not disappoint with.
Right, the belly of the whale story portion is for character development.
Exactly. Then with this is the last level isn't really like a level, it's just the boss fight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Although I will throw the twist at you, Brett. You got the orders mixed up.
Oh, did I really?
Yeah, the bit with the mom is at the start of the level, and then you go through the whole group up boss fight. But yeah, that's the twist there, is that their mother's been mind controlled, and that's how the mind control tech is like revealed. And then you go through the rest of the level and
then Chai gets mind controlled. Yeah.
And at the end, you were then brought back down, because they're like, oh, we now have the wireless mind controlling, and Chai is now mind controlled. And now, Alex, you do the thing that you mentioned.
You fight as a cat. You fight as 808.
Yes. You play as 808.
I'm more of a dog person. That's how you know that Kale is an asshole, and I am a dog person. But when you see an adorable kitty cat coming up to you and he parries you, and you say, "I'm more of a dog person," exactly, you don't.
So you have a quick, and the great thing is, like, because the controls are all consistent, you don't need a tutorial for this. You just go in and do it, and like do the jumps and press the regular buttons you would press, and then you can get to Kale and break the little mind control thing that he has, and allow Chai to get in, and then you get to legitimately one of the hardest boss fights of the year.
Yep. Which makes sense. It's the last one, and it's bone-crushingly hard.
Yeah, I'm sure, Brett, you were probably on hard as well.
I was on normal.
You were on normal?
I was on normal.
Oh, Brett,
I don't do games on hard through one hard. Time.
I ran this whole thing on max difficulty the whole time. The Kale fight is one of the most fun fights I've done. I think I had this gave me the same feeling legitimately as Elden Ring.
No, yeah, same for me on normal.
Because you have to learn his moves. This fight is long. You don't have the opportunity to get a lot of healing over it. This made me switch up my moves beforehand, as I actually had to buy the thing to have 2 special abilities and equip the healing one. So I had a like emergency heal if I needed it.
And what exactly happens if you pause the game and exit during the middle of a boss fight? Because let's say you need a break from trying it so many times.
You go back to your little safe room, and all the other characters are like, Chai, what is wrong with you? We were in the middle of dying, and you left. We have to do it all over again. Come on.
There's unique ones of these for quitting in every segment of the game that doesn't have sense for you to be in the hideout.
Yeah.
Even like ones that aren't major. So there's a bit where like you can quit out before you've gotten back with Cinnamon and Macaron, and they're in the hideout, and they just talk to you and are like, "Hey, maybe you should play the game, and then you'll learn why we're here." It's wonderful. It was super funny.
It's so good.
All the lines are voice acted. It's great. Yeah, I think this Kale boss fight, it starts out, the first phase is not too bad. It kind of introduces the versions of attacks you'll fight in the third phase that are not as crazy. So you learn the timing for everything and what you can dodge and what can be parried. Phase 2 is more of the Corsica type deal of you're having to do the parries and counters and whatnot, and it's pretty hard. I think his is tough because he hits hard. You don't have the Corsica benefit of not taking tons of damage if you fail here, so you kind of just have to get it right. And then you have like the gimmicky part of it where he has arms that have Z shielding, and then he has like the fire thing and the laser thing that you have to use the different characters to counter and break. Although I did also learn you can just brute force this segment and not break any of it and just hurt him.
Really?
Yeah, you can brute force it. I don't know why you would. It would be much harder. Than
supreme boneheadedness.
Yeah, if you just don't learn the mechanic, I guess you could do that. But if you've learned the mechanics of the rest of the game, and the character's calling you and saying, "Hey, you could call me in for this,"
I feel like you'd have to be a lot better at the game to brute force it than just
absolutely
doing the.
But I did watch someone brute force it, and it was very funny because they were super upset the whole time. Is like, what was going on? I was like, it's so easy.
God,
you just use the attacks. This one's I don't think is super hard. This phase is not the hard part. It's more of just a check of like, do you know how to use all your abilities?
Good.
Phase 3 of this.
Be prepared to use them.
There's
all very quickly.
Phase 3 of this fight goes into the section of this where like, and you get checkpoints between every version of this. I think, don't you? So you get a checkpoint for every step here. And phase 3, I think, took me like 2.5 hours to beat.
Oh yeah, seriously.
Just phase 3. Hard. He's hard. Like there is no room for error here. You need to do the fight right. And again, I played on hard, so I don't know if you guys had more leeway on normal.
Not very much.
It took an hour and a half on normal.
It was still really hard. I can't imagine how much more difficult it was on hard.
Super hard on hard. So he'll do enough damage that like you can take maybe 2 hits and not die, but most of his moves are big multi-hit things.
If you got all the health upgrades throughout the levels, if you found all the secret like heart pieces, then you can take almost 3.
Yeah. I think the big thing in the third phase is that like he has the most challenging like robot bit things because they'll come up during his other moves, and then you have to time or dodge the first move and then also dodge the bits at the same time, which you can do. It's just you got to remember the pattern because they essentially work like the parries, but in a pattern that isn't demonstrated the same way, and it's by sound. So there's also like flashing lights if you can't hear them for some reason. But you have to like really well timed things here, and it's super satisfying. This is, I think, one of the most satisfying fights I've done in a long time.
This felt like as brutal as it was. It was the perfect thing to end the game because it tested you on literally everything you could possibly need to be tested on.
You could say this fight is the perfect drug, Brett.
Exactly, because I was admittedly a little bit disappointed that the song that we got from 9 Inch Nails was 1 Million, because I was like, okay, it was cool that they're there, but they could have picked a better song, like The Perfect Drug. And then when just the drum track started playing, I actually I was just like, I had a heated gamer moment.
Better song for this than Perfect Drug. It's such a good track for this because it fits the character. It's like it's got such a crunchy rhythm to it that just matches Kale's whole thing very well.
And it's able, because the drum sample that they use is so like fast paced, it makes you think that the song is really fast and intense, but they still have like a really like the BPM is comfortable. It's just the drum track playing over it is just it's faster on top of it, so it still feels very intense, but it's not actually like the beat is not what you have to worry about. The beat is something you could be used to because it's not much faster than the previous levels of the game. But I legitimately just from I didn't even care how hard the fight was. I was fully prepared to sit down there for like a full 6 hours
Oh
if I
my
had
god.
to
Yeah.
just listen to the perfect drug over
Because
and
the
over
music
again
was
and
so
fight
good,
something
like,
to it.
this is why
Like,
music is
oh my
so
God.
important, because if it's good, it will legitimately, like, I did not ever feel like I was going to stop in this fight, which is
Yeah.
bizarre because I was there for legitimately almost 3 hours. Like, just on this one phase of the one boss fight. And it was a great time.
Yeah, I
So
think
much
honestly
fun.
you could like just drag and drop that statement over the entire game. Like I did
Yeah.
not want to stop playing, and because my
If I didn't
work
have to
hours
sleep and work,
exactly
I would have just kept playing the game.
because my work hours start really late, and I don't think I was hired at the time when the game came out. I was just like nothing stopping me from staying up until 3 a.m. and just getting a solid 5 hours of hi-fi Russian, because if my body isn't falling apart, I don't want to stop playing because it's so good. Which is
Yeah.
a problem if you are actually allowed to do that. But the game is really like every single thing that could possibly make you want to not put it down is firing on all cylinders. You have really good music that's constantly pumping you up. You have the story is simple, but the characters are good enough where you want to see what happens to them next. So
Yeah.
you have that. The pacing is things are constantly happening and constantly auto saving. So even if you were to stop, you wouldn't lose any progress or whatever. So okay, whatever, I'll just keep going. I'll be able to pick up right where I left off tomorrow or whatever. Just keep one more level. The constant trap that we all fall into. But yeah, just with the final fight especially, it was legitimately perfect. I'm sure people have things to say about how it is too hard, but we are not those
I mean, I
people
think
here right now.
surprisingly,
So
I feel like the general consensus on this is that like this is a very well done final fight, and that you have to use everything you
good.
learned. And if you're having a hard time, you can just turn the difficulty down. Like it's not you turn it to easy and get through the fight, and you're not gonna have as nearly as many issues. That's also why a bunch of the assist stuff they just updated came out as like if you are legitimately stuck on this fight, there is assist modes to help you through it now, whereas before those didn't exist. But I think a lot of it is just like it's so well paced. The final like phase, quote unquote, of this is a gigantic QTE of you calling in every single ally that you have and doing all of your finishing moves, and it feels so much like a JRPG final cutscene the whole time. It's amazing. Yeah, I loved it so much. I think this is just great. And then post credits, there's more game to happen. The story conclusion is satisfying. It feels like you got a good thing going.
And really well animated too. Again,
really well animated.
Really nice.
There's like a cool post-credit scene of you rebuilding the industries, and like Chai's hired on as just like a person, basically.
As like a PR or someone.
He's a key speaker
figurehead?
or something. Yeah, he's like a leadership person, you know. He'll
and then he decides to finally try to learn the guitar.
Yeah, but that's the big thing, is that he never actually knew the guitar and is deciding to actually learn it. But yeah, it's super satisfying. The whole game ends super well. It's just the way that this entire game was constructed and revealed, I think, was so perfect. And this wouldn't work for everything. Like, I think so many different games would not have benefited from this shadow drop the way that Hi-Fi Rush did. I think the thing that really worked with Hi-Fi Rush is it's an unknown, but it looks very good. Like, it visually presents super well. It sounds good. There's a lot of things there that make you question of like, hey, is this gonna be good or not? And then they hit you with the, it's on Game Pass, play it today, and you're like, all right.
I'll play it today.
And what was great is they also didn't give reviewers
5 hours a night
codes, so everyone found out about this at the same time, and then there was just complete unknown of like, if you want to know how good this game is, you have to play it yourself, or you gotta wait because nobody has played it yet. So I think that worked super well and just really meant everyone went into this game on equal footing and formed their own opinions, and I think that was just really healthy to have a game that everyone could do that with and not have to be caught into this like constantly reading reviews and media trap that so much of AAA and indie stuff has fallen into now, of like, this is just a weird game that exists out of like weird circumstances and is super fun, and only exists because some really passionate people were behind it and managed to fight for it to exist. So yeah, I think this is just thoroughly great.
It is. It's a game that is literally like right after Chai's own heart as a character, because it should, if you're a marketing team looking at it, it is basically, it shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have worked. It is a defect because it's not a well-established IP that has 4 games before it. It doesn't have a realistic graphical style. It's not in a well-established genre that they know they're going to have people buying it no matter what the game looks like, if it looks good or if it looks bad. It doesn't have like the most amount of star power on it is that it had Nine Inch Nails and The Evil Within, which, like, even if you really like those things, they're like B or C level of relevance, unfortunately.
But like
Uh,
you see what happens when you take chances on just these insane
exactly,
things, and your game isn't called Balan
exactly.
Wonderworld.
I mean, that's poor Yuji Naka.
Poor Yuji Naka. May he be in jail in peace, I guess. He's probably still there. But it like, it's just once in a lifetime, just all the things just came together perfectly to make Hi-Fi Rush happen. And it's for the next little bit, at least until the next thing happens like this, it is going to be the ultimate, like, anti single player games don't do well anymore, anti only realistic graphic styles work, anti only open world games are going to be popular now, anti all the industry norms. This is like the most video game of this year and of the last like 5 years, probably, maybe
Yeah,
even
and it's
10,
just a
but
joy
that's
to
playing it
play.
a lot. It's so good. This, I like, in the grand scheme of things, I think if we're giving this game like a number rating or something, the only reason that we'd give it under a 10 is just because that's something we haven't thought of could have been added to make it perfect. But because giving something a 10 is really crazy.
Well,
But I don't know.
speaking about adding things to it, um, you can just get cosmetics in the game.
Yeah,
Oh
you unlock an
yeah.
entire wardrobe and cosmetic system once you beat the game that you can adjust
Mhm.
everyone. Tons of
Every
cosmetics you can
character.
unlock. Lots of color schemes you can change and all sorts of cool stuff. There's post-game story of you can go do all these Spectre things and just learn a little bit more about the world. Nothing earth-shattering, but it's just fun to go and do all this stuff. They give you reasons to revisit levels. You get to keep all your fun goodies from your first playthrough. Just like smoothly rolls you into New Game Plus, basically, and that's really fun.
Yeah.
Uh, Brett, I don't know about you, but this gives me the same vibe as Project Wingman. Like, this is the vibe I get from this
Absolutely.
game of
Absolutely.
hyper passion project, but like at a different scale. Of like, this was a AAA studio or double A, I think, by the size of like Tango, probably having been working on this and Ghostwire at the same time.
Yeah.
Size thing just happening. Wild. And yeah, as you were saying, Brett, like if this is not a 10, I question what your criteria for giving a 10 is. Is it just impossible? Because I think it would just be impossible.
Yeah. Because what else? What else?
Like, there's minor negatives I can think of, but nothing that is like at all close to dropping the score. There's no
Yeah.
tech issues to speak of here. Like, this game works perfectly.
I don't even
Just
think Wyatt
functions.
had tech issues with this game.
Yeah, because the one he tried to bring up was wrong and not a tech issue. It was intended.
Yeah.
It's just like a one cutscene to play right at the very start or something.
It was the, like, a sign in Zanzo's level, like, flew really far. It looked weird.
Oh
So it's
yeah,
like,
and I was like, that
Yeah,
I
he had
love
the
that.
problem with
your
the
guitar
physics,
at
and it's just
full
like,
strength, it'll fly across the map. What do you want to happen? That's great.
Yeah,
Ugh.
I mean, great time. If we did formal reviews, this would be very high on the scale, if not a 10. Like, this is, I think, as close to a perfect Ryan game that you can get.
Very
Maybe
close to
throw
a
in some
perfect
space
Rec game.
simulator elements, and then you're there. I don't know what that would look like. Yeah, it was great. This wonderful game. The reason we don't have a lot negative to say is that there really aren't many negatives.
Mm-hmm.
Any
Yeah.
other thoughts before we close out?
I mean, I guess on the to expound just 1% more on the post game stuff. I mean, there's been no word on any sort of live service elements being added because it's already in the game. As admittedly simple as it is, you can just replay the game and get like a different shirt and scarf, and also use the Left Shark costume as much as you want. But like, I am going to be playing this game with a 16-hour-ish campaign made by like 50 people or something, with all of their hearts poured into it, for so much longer than I am going to have played Halo Infinite in my lifetime. When all is said and done, the little guy has won this time.
It's like, what am I going to remember? Am I going to remember Halo Infinite, or am I going to remember Hi-Fi Rush? Hi-Fi Rush is at the top of that list.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's so much easier to remember bad things than good things. And Hi-Fi Rush is just so good it beats it.
There's not enough bad things.
Well, because that's the thing of, like, I don't know about you guys, I have not stopped thinking about Hi-Fi Rush. Like, every now and then, it'll just pop into my head, like, oh, that game was really good, I should play more. Like,
and you know, because I've played it, and I'm on YouTube a lot, YouTube just recommends me songs from the soundtrack of it.
Good.
Good
so
music,
it forcefully keeps it in my mind.
All right, well, that's the end of the show. We talked about Hi-Fi Rush. We've gushed about it all we wanted to. There's no more gushing to gush. We've done it. So
gush.
On that note, unless there are any final words, may you forever hold your peace until Sunday when we do another episode.
Would you say Hi-Fi's been gooshed?
I don't think anybody would say that.
We'll be back on Sunday with some more games-related content. As always, Tuesdays, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, on the podcast platform of your choice, YouTube,